Hello, everyone, and welcome to Collision Repair Magazine's Industry Insider Radio, a podcast for shops, shop owners, techs, and every level of the collision repair industry. I'm your host, James Kerr. It seems like every day there are more tools, more techniques, and more ways to repair. Oh, but don't forget to look up the OEM guidelines. It's no wonder collision repair techs and whole shops can fall behind in the latest and the greatest. Well, today I'm playing catch up with Keko Glue Pull Repair, GPR, and here to tell us about it is longtime Collision Repair Magazine columnist and Canadian collision specialist, Stefano Liessi. We're back to school today. It's the great balancing act, repair versus replace, and GPR2, today on Industry Insider Radio. Hello, Stefano. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm not doing too bad, James. Everything's good out here.
Oh, good. And now, can you give us a little bit of a catch up on who you are and why we think you're so great and called you in for this podcast?
Well, I'm Stefano Liessi with Canadian Collision Specialists. I've been involved in the collision repair industry for 40 years. I'm an ICAR instructor as well. I've been with ICAR for 15 years. Do some consulting. I do welding programs, estimating courses, do research on the tools that are out there so I can provide training for shops that need someone to come in and possibly update their technicians or take a new hire and give them insight on a piece of equipment.
So I guess that's where the Canadian Collision Specialist tag comes in, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's, I guess, just trying to touch on everything. I'm just trying to make it a place where everyone's repairing vehicles properly and equitably. So people are doing things fairly. They're doing the right repairs. They're utilizing the right processes and techniques, and they're getting compensated appropriately for it. And the customers are leaving with trustworthy, happy repairs.
Which that's a lot of, there's the great balancing act right there, right? There's a lot of conflicting objectives going on within that, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about repair versus replace, and we're going to use a kind of case study of GPR to go over that. So let's take a few steps back. For the uninitiated, what is glue pull repair, or GPR, and how does it differ from paintless dent repair?
So GPR is a system that you use by gluing tabs to the outside of an accessible surface panel, right? So there's a dent in a quarter panel, a door skin. You glue these tabs and you fixture them to the panel and you pull it from the outside. Paintless dent repair, if you incorporate glue pull repair with paintless dent repair, you can do quite a few amazing things. So paintless dent repair will use pry tools and pushing tools from the back side of the panel. So in many cases, you end up taking off door panels, inside interior pieces, et cetera, to get behind there and using tools to push and twist the metal back out. So you massage it out. When you use them together with a lot of patience, you can accomplish some pretty amazing things. And GPR is not PDR. So that's where people get confused with it. GPR is used to reduce the size of a larger dent while you're keeping all of the corrosion protection and the factory coatings intact as you're doing it.
Really? You do keep them all intact? Can you?
Oh yeah.
Can you screw up and lose some of them?
Yeah. Well, the worst thing that can happen, in all honesty, the worst thing that can happen is if the vehicle's older and it has been refinished through another source, another collision in the past or what have you. If the panel has been refinished, or it's an older vehicle that has sustained a lot of UV and wear and tear from the elements, there's a possibility that some of the painted surface can peel off of the vehicle. Now, again, if you're using this on an older vehicle, you're going to assess that situation. And
is this one of those cases where you need the vehicle owner to be very honest about their history?
Well, yeah. And generally, a good technician will be able to tell right away by looking at it. For the most part, though, like the experience that I've had with it and the applications that I've used it on, it's very, very minimal. And again, it's usually either those are the only two things. Is if it's been refinished somewhere, because someone may not have refinished it as well as they could have, scuffing the surfaces, contamination underneath in between the layers of material, anything along that nature, then there's a potential. And if there's again, if it's just a weathered vehicle, like it's really old, like we were doing some samples on what it must have been a 2002 Ford Explorer, which had original paint on it. It's pretty old, right? So you're talking 21-year-old vehicle. It had a tendency in the really hard areas. It did end up pulling where the crease was. That's pretty much it, though.
What kind of dent damage would you consider ideal for GPR?
Pretty much anything that you can look at, anything that you want to tackle. Now, large surface dents on a convex or concave section of a vehicle, anything on a body line, soft closure panels like hoods, roofs, doors, etc. Pretty much anything. It's great on to utilize it for ultra or not ultra, but like ultra high strength steel in panels. So a lot of the OEs now are starting to use higher strength steels on their door skins, fenders, quarter panels, right? So you're starting to see that. It's absolutely fantastic to use on places like rocker panels. So it becomes very beneficial in the regard that you can actually pull a very complex panel by using this stuff. You can even use it on your frame machine. So if you got a car up on the frame rack and there's damage on a rocker panel, you can actually use glue pull repair, and there's adapters to hook up your clamps from your frame rig, whether it's a Carolina or Chief or Spinazzi or whatever it is, and you can use that to pull instead of welding tabs on. And aluminum, it's a game changer. It's amazing with aluminum.
And aluminum can be tricky, right?
Oh, very, very.
So how often do you think GPR is in use in the Canadian collision repair industry?
Not often enough, to be honest with you. It's we have tools in place that do all of these tasks that I've just mentioned, and I get it. And a lot of people are thinking, well, I can just use my Unispot, or I'll just use the panel beater in that. But those tools do the same job, but they do it in a different fashion, and there's different nuances that go with it. So when I do see PDR in shops, the biggest problem is when I mention it or we do a demo for it, what happens is a lot of the shop technicians will say, well, I don't do PDR. So it's getting the techs to understand that it's not PDR, because they're limiting their use. It's almost like they're self-sabotaging themselves. So once you understand the application, the endless abilities of it, the mindset for the technicians and the owners will definitely change. And it's what got me interested was seeing it. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. You can do that with this? Like, wow. So that's it's not that I don't see it used improperly. I just don't see it used enough.
Where do you think the resistance is? Is it just too new, or people are stuck in their ways, or where's it coming from?
Both of those things, really. It is new.
I mean, those are usually the two things that are standing in the way.
And then that stigma of well, you got to think about it. I'm going to tell somebody that you're going to take this hot glue gun, and it looks, just like a regular hot glue gun from, the craft store. Well, it's a little bit more involved, but you're going to take this hot glue gun, you're going to take this glue stick, you're going to stick this plastic tab to this dent, and then you're going to pull the dent out. Your average technician is going to look at you like you got three eyes, because who on earth thought that gluing something to a car and then pulling it out would be practical? Because we're so used to Unispotters, panel beaters, the keys now. There's a couple companies that have the key systems, and the glue pull system uses the same physics and the same concepts, but it's just not as invasive.
Why did you decide to learn it? Because of just how much you thought, oh, this looks really impressive?
Yeah, pretty much. It's I met a couple of young gentlemen down in Calgary that have really adopted it. But actually, I think they have a YouTube channel called Gemini repair. I can't remember the exact name of it. I've seen it a few times, and they were really hyped about it and showing me pictures of stuff they've done with it. I'm like, you got to be kidding. So I wanted to learn more. And if I'm going to go out there and show someone something, I want to make sure that I know how to use it. And I want to be thoroughly trained in something so that I can say, hey, it's not a gimmick. This is real. And I did want to make sure that, it wasn't a gimmick. Because let's face it, in industries, whether it's collision repair, whether it's carpentry, whether it's baking, there's always gimmick things. This is not a gimmick. This stuff really does work, and it really impressed me and how quick I picked it up and was able to do repairs with it was incredible. So I know when people start to use it and they talk about it, it'll become a game changer for many techs out there. The positive application of this system far outweighs any of the conventional processes. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you eliminate your unispotter or your panel beater that you have in the shop. It's not like you're going to take those and throw them away. There are times when they will still come in useful. Like if you have a very incredibly hard crease in something, then to get that little crease out, you may want to go to that point. But before you use those tools, if you use GPR, you'll find that you reduce the size of the corrosion interference that you're going to create by using conventional methods.
It sounds like there's a big argument here for repair versus replace. Does this give you more options in terms of a repair, whereas before you would have had to just replace?
I believe it does, and I believe that as much as I like to engage in the process of cutting and removing and welding stuff on a car, I've always enjoyed that because it's challenging. But this eliminates that intrusion into the vehicle where the repair process that we use that damage corrosion protection that's in the closure panels by grinding away the finishes from the OE, grinding away the zinc, and then some of the weld-on attachments that we utilize heat, which is another negative on a panel. And so then sometimes people will say, forget it, we're just going to replace the panel, we'll cut it off, put a new one on, or even a fender for that matter. And when you're using those little, weld-on studs or keys, you sit on the trigger for an extra second or so, and the next thing you know, you've just pulled a hole in your panel. So now you've got to contend with that extra step, right? So it also eliminates the little pimples that you get when you're using weld-on studs. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when you use them, there's a very localized pulling point, and it tends to stretch the metal in each individual spot. And I call them pimples. And some people will say, you know what, let's just replace it. It's too much work to do this dent. But if you approach the dents in the correct fashion with the GPR systems, you can actually take what looks like a very big dent and you can reduce it to the point where you're just putting on a skim of putty over top the clear and calling it a day. So you've just saved all of the interior corrosion protection. You've just saved removing and installing interior panels, other than the stuff you're detrimming for a refinish. You can reduce the size of a repair so that now you are refinishing within a panel as opposed to creating another blend panel because you haven't damaged the paint far enough in order to incorporate, like say, if you're fixing a fender and blending the door, you might be able to reduce the size of this repair to the point where you're refinishing within the fender itself. So there's a lot of situations where you can actually repair something without having to replace it.
So it sounds like all new tools, it's an issue of where best to use this, like when best to put this to use, that it's just going to become part of people's arsenals.
Yeah.
Now, business benefits, like just based on what you're saying, there's some pretty obvious benefits not having to take the time to wait for a part to come in if you can salvage it in a way that you couldn't otherwise. Welding is the fun part, right? Like getting to cut something up and weld it. That's the
Yeah.
that's the fun one. But if the least amount that you can affect the structure as possible would be the better. Is this as close as we're going to get for now to some kind of magic telekinesis warping it back into place?
You know what? I'm very much a proof and realistic person, but to use that analogy, yeah, it is a little bit like magic in the sense that you're doing this all from the outside surface. You're not damaging it inside, and with a little bit of patience and skill and practice, um, yeah, it becomes magic. You can actually save things on a vehicle that you may not have before. There's an example where, okay, let's just take I'll give you a very quick synopsis, myself included. I have an older vehicle. My car is a 2003 and it has the original paint on it, and it's in exceptionally good condition. If I get into, a small vendor or someone, let's just say, for example, someone's backing out of a parking stall at the Walmart and they bump my front fender or my quarter panel. If the dent
You're giving me
is,
flashbacks here, but
yeah, if the dent is, relatively reasonable, and you're looking at thinking, well, you know what? It's not scratched. It hasn't damaged the surface. It's just pushed the panel in. With enough work and effort, I can actually save this panel and not have to refinish it at all if I really want to go that far. In my case, my vehicle, as long as I keep the original paint on it, it's going to have more value as soon as I start refinishing it. And for some people, they may be particular. Another case is where the fender on a vehicle was damaged, an older vehicle from actually, I think it was from early 80s or mid 80s. And the person didn't want to buy a fender and replace it because we're going to find a new fender for it. Had to get a used one or an aftermarket one. And the person really didn't want to do that. So they spent about, I don't know, I think the person spent about 8 hours removing the dent using glue pull repair. And in doing so, they save the fender and they run a buffer over it and away you go. Now you might be thinking to yourself, holy smoke, someone spent 8 hours on a fender. But even if that person charged $100 an hour, it's $800 to save that fender. Now you might be thinking that's absolutely crazy. But you buy a fender, pay a technician to put it on, and then do the blending into the door. So detrim the door, get the fender ready, the cost of the materials, running of the booth and the shop. That is going to be, you're looking probably a $2,000 repair. So $800 versus $2,000 for the consumer, it's not a bad deal, right? So there's a lot of different advantages to it, and it's all about making an educated decision on, should I use it for this, and how far can I go with this, right? And those are that's an anomaly situation, but it's more prevalent than people give credit to.
would you call it the slow and steady technique?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. It's I've tried PDR myself. Back in when I was teaching high school, one of the students, they were playing football in the field, and being the jock and wanting to be the cool guy, he did the old run, jump, and catch the ball, and he landed in the box side of someone's pickup truck. So we tried PDR, and again, I'm not a seasoned PDR professional. That's a whole craft and talent within itself. But if I had glue pull repair at my disposal at that time, it would have been a game changer right there. I can't tell you how much of a difference it would have made. We got it almost out with trying PDR, but I didn't have that skill set to do it. But the glue pull repair would have made a whole world of difference because I didn't have to worry about access for the PDR tools, because that's what was happening here. You have limited access, right? This way I could do it all from the front. It would have been a whole different scenario for that particular repair.
I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but you're talking about what you were able to do in high school. I don't know how much access kids in high school have these days to any of that stuff, right? Or as opposed to more.
Pretty
I,
limited.
I mean, I would, even when I was going through high school, was when they were getting rid of all the auto body stuff.
Oh yeah, it's if you look, like you hear the reports, whether it's whether it's Ontario, Nova Scotia, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, doesn't matter. And, provincial governments will boast about how much money they're putting in education. They're building all these new schools, but you find me a school that they're building that has a quality automotive program, or find me a school that even puts in an auto body shop. I guarantee you won't find one in a new school. And it's sad. Like, yeah, it's not out there anymore.
Well,
It's
we've talked about
disappearing.
this. We've talked about this
Yeah.
before, but like I went to the same high school my dad went to, right, in a small town. And when he tells me the kind of things that they used to have in that high school back in his day, like small
Mhm.
electronic repair and things that would have made great trades for folks, like to go straight into trades, that was all gone halfway
Mhm.
through I was in high school. Uh, this is off topic though. Sorry. Like,
That's okay.
I mean, it's pertinent, right? Because the fact is, you've got these shops that are trying to turn around the vehicles as fast as possible, right? As
Yeah.
fast as reasonably possible to spec and with all matter of safety. And you want them to keep on top of all the new developments in the industry, right? We talk about GPR. It seems really neat. It seems really interesting. What would you say to a shop tech or even a shop owner that says, wow, that sounds awesome. I don't need one more thing. Like, we're already trying to get everything out as fast as we can. How do you convince them that this is something that they need to think about adding to their repertoire?
Well, I'm I'm a Red Seal journeyman. I did half my career refinishing vehicles, and the other half collision repair and refinishing at the same time. So I've done all the gamut, and I understand what they're saying. Like, there's a certain way we do things. We're used to it. Everything's going good. We're fine. We don't need another tool, and that's true. But in many cases, when I've used some of those tools, I've thought to myself, if only I could get this a little bit better. If only I could get this to not, I don't care who the technician is out there. We've all had it where we've used the Unispotter and we've burned a hole through the piece of metal. It's like, oh, now you got to weld it up. Or we've had it where the heat and the pulling has ended up stretching something and it's made it more difficult to repair it because of the little pimples that are on there. And uh, by the time we're done grinding, we finish, we got this great big repair on something that looks like it really could have been a lot smaller. Glue pull repair, one of the things that's really advantageous of it is um, it's all of the tabs are recyclable when they come to the end of their life expectancy. Kiko warranties the larger tabs for life. So right away, your consumables have dropped considerably. It's not like you use a tab once and throw it away. Whereas a Unispotter stud, you use it once and it's gone, right? Um, so there's an approach to look at it economically for a shop owner. If you're asking the techs, what you're doing is you're saying, look, here's a great big dent on this vehicle. Before you get into removing panels and what have you, if you use this product properly, you can reduce what looks like a massive dent that's on the verge of replacing a panel, and you can bring that to the point of basically a one skim coat of 2-part putty, and it's going to prep. That's a lot of uh, that's a lot of time saving effort when you get good at it. So techs will still be able to produce uh, quickly. They'll be producing very good work, knowing that corrosion protection, everything has all been left in place, and it's a quality job. And it eliminates the potential holes from unispots. It eliminates the grinding of the corrosion protection. But from that, it it has a reusable factor that it's crazy how long you can get 150 pulls out of a tab before you're looking at it going, okay, this really has to go. I got to get another one. And then it's warranted. How can you go wrong when you start looking at it that way, right?
Yeah. I've had a few, more than a few techs tell me the worst feeling in the world is you're sitting on the fence about repair or replace. You go for repair and it doesn't work and you have to replace
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
So let's take that analogy. You've got you're in a big massive debate with the image desk, and they're saying repair it, and you're saying replace it, or your manager is saying, we should replace it, and you're like, no, I want to repair it. Uh, put a glue tab or two on it. If you know how they say, oh, give it a pull, let's see how it comes out. All right, it's a lot easier to throw a glue tab on there and give it a pull than it is to get the grinder out and start welding studs and stuff and pulling it, or going to that degree, right?
Well, that's
So
what
it's
I'm
a
saying. There
yeah.
seems to be less risk of just giving it a try, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if it works, well, you're halfway there already. And then you can negotiate how you want to do that repair, right? In the shop, how many times have we had situations where car goes into prep, or the car's in the detail area, and someone bumps into it with something, puts a little dent in the panel. You're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. This car's got to go today. Like, what are we going to do? Well, you got some glue pull repair. You can actually give that a fix and probably eliminate the possibility of that going back into the paint cycle again because there's a dent on it or what have you, right? Great for situations where a customer comes in and says, oh, yeah, while you guys got it here, could you fix this? And it's on the other side of the car. And you're like, you know what? That's not a bad looking dent. We could probably glue pull that. And you can tell the customer too, like, hey, right now you got 100% of a dent that is irritating you on your car. For a reduced cost or a fee, we can do a glue pull repair. We might not get 100% out. We might get 95% out, but it's going to look way better than it does right now. People will buy that. They'll say, yeah, why not? You don't have to paint it. You don't have to put it in the booth. And as much as I love a freshly painted car, there's nothing more gratifying than glass finish on a vehicle. We have to look at it from a business perspective. And sometimes business warrants not doing all that work. Sometimes it warrants satisfying the customer by giving them something simple, quick, efficient, and economical. And I think glue pull repair falls into that category for many cases.
We talked about the tabs. What other tools are required in the process?
Um, you can start off really entry level if you want with just some real basic kits that they have. There's different configurations, but the things that you need to have, you have to have the glue gun, you have to have an infrared thermometer, you have to have your glue sticks, and you need to have the tabs and then the proper pulling attachments that you're going to use with those tabs. The Kiko system is fascinating because you can take all of the different pulling attachments and you can mix them up. So if you have 3 pulling tools on that Kiko cart, you could probably turn them into 15 pulling tools by the end of the day. Like it's incredible how well thought out it is. And so they've made it so that even if someone has a smaller system, they could still do quite a deal with it. So I was impressed with that. That's why I went there. It really did catch my attention.
Are there other companies doing the same thing?
Yeah, there's other companies out there. I find sometimes other companies are using it in conjunction with, because this is something that's coming up quick. We got to come up with something, and
Mm.
and they bring it into the fold. And not to say that they're not good, because I'm the last one to blame tools for anything. Every tool has its pros and cons, and I don't care who it is, right? But Kiko, this is all they do. They do glue pull repair in their body shop equipment, and they focus on paintless repair as well, right? But they have two sessions of training. You can do glue pull repair training, and then you could go into paintless dent repair, which is a week long versus a day long. So there's a difference, right? But yeah, there's others. You got good old Amazon out there that they're selling a knockoff of everything on the planet. So you can find stuff there too. Just be aware, as with anything, in many cases, you get what you pay for.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to squeak that in because this podcast is not brought to you by Keko. We just are great to have you as a collision repair specialist on the podcast. But it's interesting. If somebody's doing something interesting, we want to talk about what they're doing that's interesting and adding to the industry, right?
Even Kiko says, they'll they don't say you have to use our glue, you have to use our heat gun, or the only reason I'm saying the word Kegel is because that's what I'm exposed to. But to your point, yes, there are others out there, and you can intermix them. It's all a matter of how you perform the process is what truly matters. It's not the tool, it's the person using it in these cases.
Let's talk about the highs and lows. Can you describe a particularly challenging job that you've used this on successfully?
Uh,
What's the worst? The worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst.
Yeah.
For me, there was a dent on a hood. It was on a Kia Sportage, and the dent was on the um, there's a convex body line right along the leading edge of the fender on the hood. And so not only was the body line pushed in, but it also pushed out and swelled into the surface area of the hood and down towards the fender. And so you've got a convex curve, you've got a concave curve, and then you've got this body line running through the middle of it. And that was relatively challenging because it's you don't have a whole lot of surface area for support because it's a hood, it's soft, right? But managed to get it out, I would say probably about 96%. And then it was at the stage where a skim coat of putty and then away you go. Now, I spent probably about 20 minutes on that. So if you look at it, I spent 20 minutes, but I didn't grind anything. I wore a white shirt the whole time I was working on it. I never got dirty. There's no dust, nothing there. The other one was a black hood, aluminum hood, doing little hail spots. And within 15 minutes, I was getting a hail spot gone on a black aluminum hood. That I thought was pretty impressive for someone that has grown up and used grinders, unispotters, panel beaters, etc. all their life. Now I'm sitting here with a glue pull repair, and within 15 minutes, I'm now able to, do a very reasonable job. Like I would have left it on my car. I would have polished it and called it a day. So um, those to me were the two challenging things.
Old dogs, new tricks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about the other side of that. What are the limits of GPR?
The limits are going to be whatever you limit yourself to. In other words, you're going to have to experiment and play with it. I've seen it used on some pretty serious stuff, and I've seen guys pulling frame rails over with it, on a frame rack. So, and straightening rad supports and straightening out upper tie bars, not rods, tie bar ends on a structure.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow!
You would be amazed. I'm not kidding. It's when I saw the rocker panel, I think that I didn't do the rocker panel, but I saw it, and you know how on a rocker panel, a lot of times they have a lot of gravel guard, or they'll have rubberized textured coatings along the bottom sides of the rocker, and it's a real pain. You have to clean that all off to do your unistuds. They glued the tabs onto the body line of the rocker, so basically the sill, and they pulled that rocker out to the point where, once again, you were just using some 2-part putty, and it was in a good, I'm going to say probably 3/4 of an inch along that body line. So someone had scraped it up on something, and they hooked it up, put the tower on it. They hooked the frame rack, like the dozer to it, and they pulled it out, man. It's incredible how strong it was. And that's the stuff that really caught my attention. It was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is not just, and again, this is that whole, well, I don't do PDR. That's that mindset comes from everyone sees them doing PDR with it. But hey, you can hook up a tower to this thing and pull it. Like, you can't go wrong. You're not going to rip the metal with it. The worst you're going to do, as you said, limitations. The worst is you're going to pull paint off. So that's the worst case scenario, is you're going to pull paint off, or you could over pull something if if you're a novice and you're learning it, and all technicians are going to make learning mistakes, right? But once you get it dialed in, man, I tell you, it's impressive.
Do you feel like, just in your estimation, that the industry is going to shift in this direction?
I believe it will. We have the EV onslaught coming our way in the next 20 years
Dun,
as
dun,
we
dun.
progress. Yeah. You can take glue pull repair and you can do outer panel damage without even unplugging the vehicle or disconnecting the battery unit, because you're not using any welding, you're not using any unistuds, you're not doing anything of that nature. And I think a lot of these repairs could be done utilizing the service, and I think it's going to become more popular. And I haven't seen any reason why not. Like, I haven't seen anything that says, "Oh, well, okay, yeah," but I haven't seen that yet. So that's pretty good, I think.
Does the technology, do you think, have room to grow still?
Um, Everything has room to grow. I've caught myself so many times thinking of something being at its limit, thinking, yeah, that's never going to change, get any better, and then a year later, I'm proven wrong because there's some guy out there with a bigger brain than mine that has managed to scientifically come up with something that far surpasses the last thing we had, right? So I think there's always room for it, refining it, quality of different applications and how they use it. Yeah, I think it'll grow, but I, I think a lot of thought has been put into it. I think it's pretty spectacular for the it started off pretty high. It set the bar high. How's that?
This is just fantasy, but what it makes me think of is, are we looking towards a future of collision repair where everyone's clean and there's no welding, there's no nothing. You just attach different units to the side of a vehicle, and all the dents come out themselves.
You know what? Um, I'm sure someone is working on that. I mean, let's look back. Remember the GMC, the Saturn, with all the plastic bolt-on panels? That was a concept there, which is similar to that. Uh, Tesla right now, they don't, well, as last I understand, is in their repair procedures, they don't want to pull anything. You don't put a car up on the frame rack and pull an aluminum rail. Tesla wants you to measure it. And wherever the measurements are good, you leave it. Wherever they're bad, you take the part out and you put another one in. So it's like Lego. You take it out and put a new piece in. And in some cases, some of the OEs are rivet bond and adhesive bonding with rivets. Some of them are still using squeeze type welding. So, and who knows what someone else is going to come up with in the future. Like I said, there's a lot of big brains out there doing some real hardcore thinking. And we have no idea what's transpiring in the building next to us where someone's designing and developing something. I think it's GM has 33,000 engineers on staff in North America. So who knows what one of those guys is doing?
There's always a bigger brain, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for educating me on GPR, and I'm excited about what the future might look like. I don't know. I hope it's not too clean. You still want to still want to get in there, still want to get dirty, right? All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, um, there's all kinds of other advances now with vacuum sanders and the different the way that the systems are set up, and some of them are really great. And I mean, hey, let's face it, health wise, our industry has come tenfold when it comes to health and safety for technicians that are on the floor compared to what it was 15, 20 years ago. It's come on, it's advanced incredibly. The repair processes are different, but it's still a very gratifying industry, and I think it's still amazing how we can take something that's damaged and put it back on the road again safely and um, viably. I think it's incredible.
A note of optimism from collision repair specialist Stefano Liessi. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Collision Repair Magazine's Industry Insider podcast. And any final words for our collision repair community?
No, just keep fighting the good fight. Keep at it. And hopefully there's light at the end of that tunnel for everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, listener, for joining me today for Industry Insider Radio. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening: Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And tune in next time for another episode of Industry Insider Radio. I'm James Kerr. Thank you for listening. Today's guest was Stefano Liessi, Canadian collision specialist. For more information on Stefano and the work he does, please visit www.canadiancollisionspecialist.com.